Hi, my name is 𝐏𝐿𝐴 𝐀 and I'm the founder of Prepare Like a Pro. Growing up, I loved playing cricket and football and had a strong passion for helping others. Over the past 11 years working in the industry, I've been lucky enough to have worked alongside Shaun Murphy, the head strength and conditioning coach at Essendon, Luke Boyd, physical performance manager at Hawthorn, and interned under Andrew Russell, high performance director at Carlton. I started Prepare Like a Pro after my time as a strength and conditioning Hawthorn Football Club to help developing footballers gain a competitive edge with AFL standard preparation methods. If you're a developing footballer wanting to take your game to the next level, we'd love to help you. At Prepare Like a Pro, you can expect to not only improve your athleticism, but also lower your risk of injury or overload. There are training programs suitable for every level of involvement. I would love to help you choose the one that best suits your goals and personal motivation. Head to our Inquire Now page and I'll get back to you soon. Welcome to the Prepare Like a Pro live chat show. Tonight we have Dr. Dominique Condo. She's the accredited sports dietitian and lecturer in sports nutrition at Deakin University. She consults at the Geelong Football Club and Deakin Melbourne Boomers in the WNBL, having extensive experience working with both junior and elite athletes, offering nutritional support and advice. Before we start tonight's episode, if you're new to the podcast, our podcast mission is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Really looking forward to this chat, guys. If you have any questions for Dom, all you need to do is just use the chat box, and later on in the episode, we'll go to those questions. Just bringing Dom on now. How you going, Dom?
Hey, Jack, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to it. Your name's been mentioned a few times, so thanks for jumping on. And really looking forward to this chat. We'll start at the beginning. At what age did you discover you had a passion for sports nutrition?
Yeah, what a good question. I think that now it feels like years and years ago. But I mean, I've always loved sport. So growing up with sport, my family are mad footy supporters. So I grew up going to footy games back in Adelaide, from Adelaide. So always loved it. But when it comes to nutrition, I sort of changed my career path in my final year of school in year 12. I always was planning to be a lawyer, and that was just the pathway for me. Did all of my work experience in law firms and thought, going to be a lawyer. And then I did nutrition in year 12 by a bit of an accident. There was a bit of a mix-up with my subjects, and I just had to choose between a couple, and nutrition was one. And I was doing a lot of science subjects, so I thought that might go quite well with it. And I just fell in love with it. So absolutely blitzed it and thought I need to do this and completely changed career paths. So went into biomedical science at uni and then mastered in nutrition, and always having my sports sort of passion, always a really active person myself. And it sort of started from there. I started to blend my two passions together at around, uni time.
Awesome. Oh, that's interesting. So a real change in your path, which no doubt is very common at 18.
Yeah.
But what was it around that course? Had you not been exposed to a nutritionist at that point? Like, did you get to meet a nutritionist during the course, or was it just a matter of you found a hobby or a passion that yet hadn't really opened up to you before?
Yeah. I mean, I come from an Italian family, so we love food anyway. So food was always a big part of my life. But I guess I hadn't thought about nutrition as a science before. And I loved biology. So I was doing biology in year 12 as well, and really loved it. Loved learning about the body and how it works. And then when I started learning about nutrition, I just thought, this is amazing. I loved understanding how what we eat influences the body, and from everything between from well-being to performance, and just thought there's something in this. I'd love to pursue this as a career. I didn't know how I would become a sports dietitian. I thought either the nutrition, the masters in dietetics course that you have to do to become a dietitian, it has absolutely no sport in it at all. So it's all clinical. So I wasn't exposed to sports nutrition until after I had become a dietitian, but I knew that I had this real passion for sport and nutrition that whole way through. So, I knew it was a career option. I just had to wait until I was qualified to then specialise in that area.
Yeah, and were those clinical skills that you built up in your degree, have they helped you work in the elite setting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're your foundation. It sounds silly, but even being able to do a nutrition assessment really quickly is really important when you're working with athletes. So they often don't like to sit down and talk too much about what they're eating. So, you can pretty quickly get an idea and quantify nutrition intake with that clinical knowledge. So, it's essential to learn those skills. I think I just realised pretty early on that I didn't want to work in a hospital for the rest of my life with sick people. I sort of, which is, amazing to do if that's what your passion is. But I guess I wanted to try and make athletes better. So, using those skills, they helped you do that, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and no doubt there'll be some aspiring sports nutritionists or dietitian that want to work in elite sport like yourself, have a passion for food, have a passion for health and performance. How did you go about, once you started to recognise that there is a career in it, how did you go about starting to get yourself in with getting work experience with athletes?
Yeah, it's again a great question, and a really challenging area. I think times are probably different, 10 years ago when that was happening versus now. Probably less sports dietitians to start with, but obviously the last couple of years in sport has been really challenging post-COVID. So I don't say this expecting that it's easy for people to do at this point in time, but I reached out to people that were working in the industry. I was in Adelaide at the time, and met these people more through my clinical work. So not many sports dietitians are full-time sports dietitians. A lot of them would do a couple of jobs, and a lot of those jobs are clinical-based or private practice, and then consulted or to elite sports teams. So I met a lot of these people through other work. And, if you're keen and you make a good impression, then when you touch base with them, sort of more likely to give you a bit of an opportunity. So I got a lot of volunteer opportunities, just literally sitting like with at the time it was a dietitian of the Crows, and he also was a dietitian of Adelaide United soccer team. And I would just follow him around for a week and see what it was about, just sit in the background. He taught me through things. So reaching out to key people, also became a part of our accreditation body. So Sports Dietitians Australia, became a student member when I was studying. I'm now vice president of FDA, so I guess I can say, everyone should be a part of their organisation. But really, 100%. Taking that hat off and just talking as a sports dietitian, it is how you meet people, through conferences and workshops. You network with the dietitians that are working with the sports that you want to work in, and you just ask if you can, come in and observe or help them out in any way, and it sort of starts from there. It's a pretty clicky industry, so once your foot's in the door and you show that you're enthusiastic, I think opportunities then start to open up.
Yeah, and so what would be your first step? Is it a matter of asking for an email address, maybe from a lecturer, or is it a phone call, giving that person a call? What do you think is the most respectful way to do it if you're a student and you're like, all right, I'm going to go out and do what Tom did and get out to everyone and get some experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, emails are probably a nice entry point. And then, if you don't hear back, follow up with a phone call if you can, business number or whatnot. But ask people that, if it's your lecturer, I have a lot of my students asking me about, the key people in the industry And, you just say the main ones that are probably at a level to at least advise as well, even if they don't have opportunities. But my advice to, aspiring sports dietitians at the moment, or students that want to get some experience, is through COVID, I said it is hard. But so many sports dietitians are so, overworked at the moment, understaffed. They've lost a lot of their hands-on support within clubs. So they might be, like in my case, I'm essential worker to be working in AFL, so I can still work there, but I've lost all of my help. I had 4 students with me on placements, and that's all gone. So I'm finding myself having to do a lot of the tasks that I guess I just had a lot of help for, which stopped me from maybe doing some other things that I should be doing, whether it be, researching the literature on the newest thing that someone's asked about, or resource development. So I say to students that when you contact these people in this current climate, think about how you can actually help them.
It's great
what
advice.
can you do remotely to assist what they're doing? And you'd be amazed if you could say, like, I'm really good at searching the literature and I can put together a summary of current practice. I mean, that could be incredible for someone that just doesn't have the time to do that, because they're now doing the other sort of roles as well. So just something to think about.
Absolutely, and because it is so competitive, isn't it? So to stand out, these things can make a big difference into getting a response or getting a foot in the door.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned your work at Deakin. How has it changed for sports dietitians at the moment in this climate to get experience? Is it a fair bit of consultations online, or or what's the, I guess, not modern day dietitian, but what are some skills that are starting to be important that maybe weren't a couple of years ago?
Yeah, this is definitely the online space. I mean, I work at Deakin, senior lecturer there, so that's, teaching and research and some other sort of roles that come with that. And we've had to go all online with our teaching. So we're really now adapted to that space. So as a practitioner as well, my private work has gone online too. So, I was face-to-face. I don't do heaps of consulting work, but an evening a week I'm at 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐻 in Melbourne, which is awesome. Great crew there. But that's all online now, and most dietitians would be online consulting, and it's just a new world there. There are so many dietitians that are doing such amazing things online. Things like cooking classes. Even shopping tours, virtual shopping tours, like things like that, where you have to think outside the square. But then it's also around how you promote yourself, which I think is a skill that's really important that we don't get taught in science-based degrees on the business savvy sort of approach. And the thing is, there is a lot of competition now. Everyone needs to be online. Everyone wants to stand out, and everyone's on Instagram and these social media platforms. And so it's like, how do you actually promote yourself, stand out from the crowd, and get that business to do the online consulting? So I think they're really, really important skills that might be separate to the technical skills that you learn at university, but so crucial for career progression as well.
Yep.
So it's something that I think I would advise, all upcoming dietitians to either do a course in to educate themselves, or start to look into investing in that space as a new world.
And like you mentioned, it is a skill, and it does like most skills, require practice. So probably don't wait until you're qualified to start your branding, but you may as well start while you're doing your degree.
Absolutely, and it can be a full-time job in itself. I mean, you would know when you're running podcasts and things like that, which is such an important part of a business. It takes a lot of time, and at first you may not get all of the reward back for that time, but if you actually set that up properly and get the engagement, then that business will start to grow. So I think it's really important to understand how to do that well from the start.
Yep. And going back to your career journey, so you had a foot in the door in Adelaide, and that's where you got your first exposure to elite sport. Was it everything that you expected it to be, and what excited you about the role shadowing the Adelaide practitioner at the time?
Yeah, it was. I love team sport. So, I consult privately with, endurance-based sports and individual athletes. But I just love being involved in that team environment. I love the culture of it, and it was everything I thought it would be, following him. And then I became a sports dietitian, so I went through the accreditation course that SDA has to become an accredited sports dietitian, and I got my first official gig in the Stanford League with the Roosters, North Adelaide Roosters, and I was there for a couple of years and just loved that. I mean, they're very different to AFL, but I loved working in that, sub-elite level, and just learned a lot, learned how to set up a program, learned how to engage with athletes, and in particular male athletes. I think sometimes it can be quite difficult to get young men on board to change diets and to think about food and to educate around cooking. So that was a massive experience and learning curve for me, and really just, confirmed my real passion in that area of footy in particular.
Yeah, awesome. And were you the only sports dietitian in the program?
Yeah, yep. So that's the thing with clubs at the moment. It is rare to have more than one dietitian. A lot of dietitians do have help, definitely. So, there might be someone that works with, the AFL. I'll use footy as an example, the AFLW and the VFL teams. But there really is just like the one dietitian that would probably work with the first team, and then obviously get some interns and some help in there. But yeah, there doesn't tend to be, unlike like a strength, the S&C coaches where there might be a team of them. There tends to be just the one dietitian that sits within that high performance or medical team.
And you mentioned the soft skills of like engaging the athletes and how you didn't have all the time that you would in the clinical setting, but with footballers. So would you lean on mentors or would you read books? How would you go about developing those skills when you realised I'm not getting my message across, or when things weren't going as well as you would have liked, like compared to the clinic setting? How did you go about developing those skills in a sporting setting?
Yeah, such a good point. Observing a lot, to be honest. I think personally, sometimes it actually works against me, in certain situations, but I'm a pretty, personable person. Like I love understanding how to engage with different personalities. And sometimes it can take a while, but I see it as a bit of a personal challenge. Like, how am I going to get this person on board my journey, or our journey, and shift their thinking? So I actually quite enjoy that space, but there's definitely been times, especially in footy and AFL, where you think, I just can't crack this person. I need to, because they really do need to make changes and I can't engage with them. But I've noticed that someone else in the team does. So maybe, they've really clicked, with the S&C coach, or, the player development manager, he or she's job is to really build a relationship with everyone, so they tend to have good relationships with most of the athletes as well. So I'll sort of observe, okay, who is this person really clicking with, or at least appears that way, and either then get advice from them around, what is the best way to engage with them and learn and understand, maybe a different approach. Or sometimes even use them to advocate your message as well. So there may be times when, you're not going to click with everyone, or everyone doesn't want to click with you, but you've identified that person, and so you get them to really advocate for what you're trying to change, and almost be your messenger in that space.
Yeah. And you mentioned observing mentors and watching them. Would you ask questions live, or would you save your questions for after the consultation with the athlete? How would you go about, or would you just take notes? Like, did you have a journal or something? What was your process as you were developing your skill set?
If I was observing my mentor in that case. What we'd tend to do is debrief after the situation. So I'd sit back, I'd take notes, And I do this with my students now, where then after that, that person or that athlete has left the room, I would then sit down with them and say, what questions do you have? How do you think that went? And that's what happened with me. That's the sort of experience that I had, where I was able to be there and observe, and then have the opportunity to debrief and ask questions, and maybe ask why they did or didn't do certain things. So I learned a lot from that experience. There are different times when maybe the athlete isn't in the room, but things, you just might be following them around for a day, and then you can ask questions on the go depending on the situation. But when they're actually consulting or talking to that athlete, it would be more of a debrief after, but at the same time, so it was sort of fresh in both of our minds.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's a good process, good form of feedback. And then you mentioned that getting that experience early days really helped develop your sort of skills. At what point did you get an opportunity where you had a contract in an AFL sport? So what was your progression from that SANFL? What was your next step in the journey?
Yeah, so in the SANFL League for a while, I then was consulting privately in Adelaide whilst working clinically. So clinical dietitian, had my own practice, and that really started to grow, with the main focus being in sport. So that's where I guess I started to see the recreational athlete a lot more. You saw some elite athletes, but it was more people that were probably trained sometimes just as much as elite athletes, but weren't at that level, so to speak. So did that a lot, and just learned a lot about different sports in that space. At that time, I then stopped consulting privately and did my PhD, started my PhD in Adelaide. So I was a clinical dietitian in a women's and children's hospital, and got an opportunity to do my PhD actually in infant nutrition, maternal and infant nutrition. So that was, I guess, my clinical passion at that point in time was infant nutrition and pediatrics. So I started my PhD there, whilst then, still consulting as a sports dietitian. When I finished my PhD, I actually got an opportunity at Deakin in Melbourne, and it was a very short-term academic opportunity, so teaching based, not in sport at all. But just thought I'll give that a go. I wanted a bit of a change and a bit of a sea change as well. Born and bred in Adelaide, so thought let's give something else a go. So came to Melbourne, 3-month contract, and Deakin is known for their sports science degrees, internationally, and we're one of the only schools that has a nutrition and exercise science school. But no one was doing sports nutrition or really owning that space. So we had one unit that sort of got thrown around to people that just wanted to take it, but no one was really owning it. So I saw it as an opportunity to really try and, put my name out there and network as much as I can. So that short-term contract turned into a longer-term position in sports nutrition. And then with that came the opportunity at the Cats. So Deakin and Cats are partners, big partners, and Deakin's very much embedded at the Cats as far as student placements and those sorts of things. And so because I work at Deakin, my name sort of came up. They were looking for a dietitian, and my name came up just through conversations. And so then I was approached and ended up sort of blending the roles. Started initially as 1 day a week, and then it's actually now more like half, split my week between Cats and Deakin. And then because we have that partnership, it actually works really nicely, where we can get in our Deakin students and do research, and it's sort of one big role really that blends quite well.
Yeah, that really worked out, that move, that sea change move.
Absolutely.
When you saw that opportunity to make the move and pivot to Melbourne, and Deakin was sort of your avenue, did you know that there was a connection with Geelong? Like, did you know there was a potential there with working in Geelong, or was it more just you wanted a bit of a change and that just eventuated?
Absolutely, yeah. I wasn't aware of just how strong that connection was. And once I got in, I sort of started to, think, I see that we had our sports science, students embedded at the Cats and whatnot, but there was definitely nothing happening with nutrition in that space. And so, yeah, I guess I probably didn't understand the extent to that partnership, which has grown since I've been there as well. So it's really, really evolved a fair bit. So, yeah, it sort of was a secondary layer to moving and taking that opportunity. Definitely wasn't the thing that was on my mind. I thought I'd be saying, goodbye to high performance sport for just a little period in time while I found my feet, but the opportunity came up pretty quickly. So within the first, 3 or 4 months of being there, so it was great.
Yeah, and in your space of working at Geelong, when you had 1 day a week and now you're part time, how has the role changed? And you mentioned you had students, but now that your students are currently on hold due to COVID, but
Yeah.
You had 4 students as well. So how's the program evolved as well during your time?
Yeah, it's evolved a fair bit. I guess when I first started, unfortunately, well, or fortunately, whatever way you look at it, high performance sport is quite demanding. Same as many jobs, same as academia as well. So you always end up doing a little bit more than probably your hours too. And it's just this thing where they really suck you in because you just get so passionate about it as well. So my 1 day a week, I was probably doing a little bit more than that anyway to start with. But I guess, the first year especially, it was really just around getting the crucial, essential things done, which includes, maybe like the athletes as being number one, which they always need to be anyway, but, more that consulting with the athletes, and then obviously the safe supplementation. And they were probably the 2 main areas that were really, really key. And you just can't do everything. So, things like hydration testing and sweat testing and, a lot of education that you really want to embed. And, then even the food service side of things and the game day, that probably didn't start until a little bit later. So once I sort of really understood the landscape and really built relationships with players, so that first year was really about building the rapport so that they actually trust you and you can start to just do your job a little bit better. And it just sort of evolved from there. Obviously, being at Deakin, I was able to start some research, which has been great. So that's another sort of part of my role. It's just again with COVID, we're unable to do as much as we would like. But yeah, I run a number of research projects. Had honours students, PhD students have started now too. So that's, I guess, another part of my role and just how that program has sort of evolved. This last year and this year has been challenging. I mean, last year we lived in a hub for most of it, which was just, it's just fascinating in itself. But yeah, without students, I guess, you find yourself doing a lot of the roles that are essential, but that you'd love a bit of help with, and that's everything from the food prep side of things to even like, the ordering of the supplements that we need, the packing of all of our game day stuff, the resource development. So even like putting together, we send out nutrition newsletters once a month and send out recipes to our players and, all that stuff that our students do, which thank goodness they can still do some of it remotely in that space, but the hands-on stuff, it takes a lot of time and I find myself, having to do that because all those tasks need to be done. But then, it's sort of changed a little bit in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and for the developing footballers listening in, that are like, oh wow, Dom works at Geelong. What can I be doing to upgrade my nutrition advice? What would be some pretty common things that you see in footballers, certainly developing footballers as well?
Yeah, again, great question. I mean, a lot of developing footballers, one of the things that they, let's say our draftees, is that we need to get a fair bit of lean mass on them. So those first couple of years is a real focus on gaining that lean mass. And for some people, some players that come in, it's around actually needing to gain the size and the mass. Others, they may have the mass, but we just need to lean it up a little bit. So there's a couple of different sort of situations. But the key principles that we always say, you need consistent protein and of high quality. And the one thing I see in, young footballers is that, they might have some wheat bix for breakfast and a sandwich for lunch with some, muesli bars and fruit in between. And the real hit of protein doesn't come in until dinner.
Yep.
And that's just the Western way of eating a lot of the time. And we just need to flip that on its head. And, protein should be coming in really consistently over the day, regardless of what sort of day it is. And that's just for gaining, building that lean mass, and then also for recovery as well. So that's a big rock.
Yep.
Our fueling, so our carbohydrates, and we just really teach and learn about when you should be having the carbs and in what amounts and what types, and whether, someone that needs to really gain size, that carb intake would be quite high all the time to really get that extra energy in, versus someone that might want to just, reduce some fat mass, say, but maintain size, then that carb would really fluctuate around their training program. So that carb intake is a big part of what, we talk about in that first year. And hydration. You'd be amazed at how little a lot of, athletes that are younger actually drink. And so, we really educate around not just having these boluses of fluid when you're about to go play, but just how much you actually need over the day, because the link between hydration and performance, and especially, in hot pre-season sort of training sessions or early season, if you're from Victoria, say, you really do need to get that fluid intake in.
Yeah, and you've mentioned throughout the chat a lot of education that goes into working with athletes, like cooking classes and the newsletter.
Absolutely, yeah.
What would be some good do you have recipes on your website, or are there some sort of things that people can follow, whether it be smoothies and?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I do. And then we post regularly on social media platforms as well around some recipes too. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to even, if it helps to share some with you, happy to do that as well, if anyone's interested. So yeah, but the recipe, the food planning and prepping is just crucial. And if you really eager to make changes and to improve performance, you have to know what you're going to eat around your training sessions coming up, and not just think about it the hour before. And I really think that's how, you can make a big difference, is just really the same way you'd have your training plans, you have your nutrition planned around that.
Yeah. And then on that, periodization with nutrition gets thrown around a little bit. For those that don't quite understand how periodization and nutrition works, what can be the benefit for adopting periodization throughout, your different phases of off-season, pre-season, and season?
Yeah, and I guess, that example I gave around changing carb intake around training is an example of periodization, where essentially you're adapting what you're eating around the different phases, and that can be macro, so times of season, or micro, so training sessions. And I guess the real benefit of that is making sure that, you're fueling appropriately, you're recovering adequately, and you're getting the changes that you're after in body composition, whether that be increasing mass or reducing fat mass. And so actually doing that at different phases and changing that energy and macronutrient intake can really help with those goals.
Yeah. And is there a danger in putting on muscle too quickly at a young age, for the 16, 17, 18-year-old footballers listening in?
Yeah, very much so. Depending on body types, some body types gain muscle quickly, especially if they're really eating a lot around those training sessions. And I guess what I've seen is that extra load quickly can then increase some injury risk as well. So you do have to be really careful about not putting it on, in a fashion that's just, within a couple of months you're 6 kilos heavier. You do want to actually plan that out. And as a bit of a rule of thumb, with our first years, over the whole first year, we wouldn't want to see more than a 10 kilo weight gain at max. And now some people wouldn't even gain 2 kilos because they don't have to. They already come in pretty solid. Whereas others, we know that we need to get them stronger and get them to gain size. And it might be that in 5 years' time, they're actually 20 kilos heavier than when they came in. But that should actually be a slow progression towards that. You don't need to gain everything in that first year. So, we often say a 10% sort of, weight gain on a weight is about right in that first year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, Lucas has sent through a question. We'll do, for those that have questions, as soon as you think of them, guys, send them through the chat box and we'll get them all answered at the end of the interview. That'll probably be the most efficient way. So going back to your career journey there, are there some, so you're now in the elite level and you're at Geelong and you're working at Deakin, so you're pretty much at the pinnacle there. That's a good duo. Were there people that helped you get there? Were there some strong mentors? Who were some strong influences of your career to get to this point?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like as for that dietitian in Adelaide, I guess really first introduced me to sports nutrition and opened up opportunities for me. It was a huge influence in my life. So
what was his name? Is he still
Anthony Mead from South Australia? Yep. He doesn't consult heaps in sports anymore, but he was one of the leaders in that space. So he was, really, really crucial for me. I guess one of my old lecturers that influenced me to actually start my PhD, I think my PhD, doing a PhD is what really opened all the doors for me. And it's a point of difference. More and more people are now doing PhDs, but there's not heaps of PhD qualified. And I think that really opened up opportunities within high performance sport to sort of stand out a little bit and to be able to offer something a little bit different from the research, sort of evidence-based perspective. So that was huge for me. And I personally feel like it's changed my career, in a way that I didn't expect. And I'm not even in the area that I did my PhD in anymore whatsoever. My research is now all sports. But even so, it's opened up so many opportunities. So that was a really big influence for me. And then since actually coming to Melbourne and to Deakin and the Cats, there's a senior, he's a professor now at Deakin, and still my main mentor, who just really is my supporter and has just opened up these opportunities and allowed me to, I guess, have both of these roles and trust me to do my job with both demands. He's been incredible for me. And then from the Cats perspective, actually our old footy GM, who's coming back to the Cats as CEO, was a huge mentor for me as well. So
who are those guys' names? I'll write them in the people mentioned.
Brad Aisbett and Steve Hocking. So they were pretty big influences, and Brad knows where Brad is still in that space. Steve may not know probably the extent of influence that he did have, but just huge, from a footy perspective. So there were some pretty key people in my career path.
And you mentioned the PhD being a real open more doors for your career. Was that your motivation because it's no easy feat? If it was, there would be a lot more that do it. Was that your motivation, or were you were particularly interested in that topic and it was like the Deakin role and Geelong connection, it just eventuated? Was that the same as the PhD, or did you sort of do that because you thought this is going to set me apart?
Yeah, it's a great question. I honestly left uni thinking I do not want to be a researcher. Like I did my master's, I did biomedical science and master's in dietetics that had a research component. And I just thought it's just not my passion. My passion is people and practitioner, being a practitioner. But I realized I really missed science and research. And I guess I've always been a little bit of a studier and a bit of a I just loved it, and I realized I really did miss it. But this is going to sound a little bit strange. It probably shouldn't be anybody's motivation to do a PhD, but I was just a little bit bored, to be honest, in Adelaide, in that I was doing my clinical job in the hospital, but I just thought I don't feel like I'm being yet challenged and stimulated the way that I wanted to. I knew that it would be a very comfortable career path and a great one, but I just felt like there was something missing for me. And so I just thought, what are the options? What can I actually do? And then when I was, just told that, well, you're actually eligible to do a PhD because of my master's degree, And I thought, well, I thought I've always thought it'd be cool to be a doctor, and I'm not going to go back and do medicine. So I guess it's a way to become a different sort of doctor. You know, if I knew how much work, I probably wasn't as prepared for it as I should have been. It was the most intense 4 years of my life. But as I said, like the biggest learning curve, and so worth it.
Yeah, awesome. Super inspiring for those tuning in. And how did you go about finding your subject and starting your PhD and getting that approved as well? How hard was that process?
Yeah. Well, there's a few different ways you can do that. In my situation, I was working again at the Women's and Children's Hospital, so I had contacts there. And so it was sort of a natural progression where I expressed interest in doing my PhD, and then the clinical dietetic unit was connected with a research unit at the hospital. And so the head of that research unit was also, she was a professor, but she was a dietitian as a qualification, and just sort of had a meeting with her, and they were a really successful research group. And so had won lots of grants from NHMRC, so big grant money where they could run these projects. And so she sort of said, these are the projects that we've actually got going or about to start that we are looking for PhD students, and your scholarship would come under, that grant money. So I sort of had, a couple of options of projects within maternal and infant nutrition from that sort of way. Now, that's one way that you can do things. I think times have changed a lot since then as well, where, the research money probably isn't as common to get some of these big grants. And so to have a scholarship lined up in that way is probably a little bit more rare. What tends to happen now is, if I've got PhD students at Deakin and whatnot, and it would be I might have a project that I'm sort of wanting to start, and I would put out an advertisement for students that have got like a first class honours, so they're actually eligible for a scholarship through the university. And it's almost like an application process, almost like a job, going for any job, where that PhD opportunity would be advertised. Or I get students contacting me saying, I really want to do a PhD, this is my background, does it align with your current projects? And you sort of start to establish a project together.
Yeah. And has that been something that could be done at Geelong Cats under your program?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So I've had a few honours students, and now they're sort of transitioning into some PhD projects. So whether it be Geelong Cats or more like, footy in general, female sport, I do a lot of my work in as well. And, through Deakin, we have contacts with a lot of sport, basketball, netball, footy. So it may be more broad, or it could be specific to one sort of club.
Yeah, and you mentioned basketball. You're consulting at Boomers as well, so you've had great experience across different sports. Is that something is that an intention of yours, or is it? Do you sort of go where there's an opening in your week, and if it fits the right timing with your schedule, then you'll take it on? How do you manage these different programs you're involved in?
Yeah. No, I always, I never say no to an opportunity straight away. I think you always have to think about opportunities and how you can learn from them. And all sports are different. At the end of the day, I think the principles of nutrition in team sport, you're going to use the same principles and just apply them differently depending on the athletes. Yeah. So, as I said, team sport is my real expertise, and I just see that whether it's basketball, netball, footy, rugby, you use that same sort of approach and just adapt it to the specific requirements. So, I really do like to have, get experience across a few different team sports to sort of, expand my expertise in that area. I do see a lot of individual athletes in my private work and, endurance based as well. But, I haven't had the experience of working in the institutions like, VIS or AIS, or you're working with Olympic-based athletes. I think that would be an incredible experience as well, and very different to sort of my experiences more in that team sport sort of culture. So that's something that I haven't done, but something that hopefully one day I'll get the opportunity to do as well, just to keep learning and understand how to do.
What have we got? Brisbane in 32.
There you go. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Exciting things to come.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned like how at a sports dietitian, most of the time you'll be part-time. So as you're building your brand and you're working your way into the field, are there other ways out of working in the clinic and working at a uni that you can make an income as a sports dietitian? Like you mentioned, building your own brand as well.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think that you have to think outside of just high performance sport, like there is a whole world of such incredible recreational athletes that want the advice from dietitians that work in high performance sport. And to be honest, that's probably going to make up the bulk of your work. And so it's about thinking, how can I what can I do differently to engage with that population group? Now, of course, one-on-one consulting is definitely something to think about, but, there are so many different ways, even thinking about, online programs that you can start to work with, resources, developing resources, writing books. I mean, I know that this is, might be above where some people are at, but you have to think, how do you actually use that knowledge and expertise that you have in high performance sport and relate that to people that are actually, training a fair bit, and so principles are still really useful, but they're actually going to be where you'll get the bulk of your income. And so you have to sort of think outside the square in that space. But I think, that needs to be where most of the focus is.
Yep. And then how do you go about, like, now that you've done your PhD, what are some ways that you currently self-develop yourself and grow your knowledge and your practical skills to keep yourself, like you mentioned, like in the know and sharp at what you're doing?
Yeah, I think that the lucky thing about working at a university is that it's my job to keep up with the evidence because I have to teach it. So that's actually, it's difficult to do, but it's a part of my role. And so, and that's what I love about science, is that it's always evolving. And that can be really frustrating for people, especially in nutrition. What we have to remember is that nutrition science is such a young area of science. So it's still developing. So that's why, like last week, that's an exaggeration. Last year, we may have said, this is how we do things. And then this year we've decided, actually, it's changed a little bit, and people just say, there's so many conflicting views around nutrition, but it's just that the evidence emerges and we learn more. And it sort of builds on each other. And so, I think personally, I just try my best to keep on top of the evidence base in my area, in sports nutrition more specifically. You can't be an expert at everything. So I don't know everything about nutrition for clinical diseases, but I really try and obviously read the scientific evidence around my area of expertise. And then, going to conferences, going to workshops. So as an example, Sports Dietitian Australia will run now online webinars, often from experts in the area, whether it be learning about the dietitians that have just come back from Tokyo and doing a webinar on their experiences and what they learned and passed on. You can always learn from each other. And so engaging in those sorts of things just keeps your knowledge base up and keeps you fresh as a practitioner as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the other benefits of having different roles in the industry is that you can transfer those skill sets that you're developing, like you said, with the research helps your role at Geelong and with the Boomers.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Well, we'll have a quick little drink break, guys. This is a short video about our academy, and then we'll ask Lucas's couple of questions around his football. And if you've got any questions for those tuning in, feel free to send them through. Hi, I'm Jack McLean, an AFL football strength and conditioning coach, and I want to introduce you to the Prepare Like a Pro Academy. Our academy is a subscription-based platform where you can sign up to be a part of our community. If you get to the end of each episode of the podcast and are hungry for more, this is for you. Designed for aspiring AFL athletes and staff, you'll receive heaps of bonus weekly content, learn who the guests are in advance, and submit questions. Access to our Facebook group with Jack and other Prepare Like a Pro coaches. You'll be able to receive merchandise, program discounts and freebies, and get free access to our live events, exercise technique database, and much more. This is a great way for you to support the podcast, and it helps me with production and release of epic content for you guys each week. Your contribution goes a long way in making the Prepare Like a Pro community possible. For a small monthly fee, you'll have access to all of the special content released on our Academy forums. There's no lock-in and you can cancel absolutely anytime. Okay, welcome back guys. So we've got a few questions through from our Patreon members. We'll start with Lucas O'Day. So should I be eating at quarter time, half time or 3/4 time? And if so, what?
Yeah, awesome question, Lucas. So in short, yes, we should be eating something over a game to make sure that those energy levels are maintained. And the key there is to get the sugar levels up. So we don't want anything that's going to take a long time to digest. It should be a simple carbohydrate. Now that can be anything from, some fruit is a good option. You might see athletes having lollies at that time, energy gels at that time. Dried fruit can be good too. Drinking fruit juice or Gatorade. So you don't need a lot, but having something small, either, especially halftime, potentially a small, carbohydrate drink at the quarter time break will just make sure that you maintain those energy levels throughout the game.
And next question, is there a window before and after a game or training to eat without feeling sick?
Yeah, so feeling sick is a common issue that a lot of athletes have, and it can be a combination of the digestion that might be a little bit slower when nerves are involved, but nerves really tend to be the main thing that can cause this. So we have to think before a game, you really want a good 2 or 3 hours to eat your last main meals. It can be digested in time to actually have as energy. So you don't need to eat that close to a game, something that's substantial. 3 hours before getting in your last main meal, and then topping up with something that isn't too heavy so it won't make you feel sick. And there are a lot of players that I work with that, can feel quite nauseous on game day and whatnot. They might just get it more from their liquid-based foods, so to speak. So again, in that last half an hour to hour, whether that be, a milk-based drink, some people like getting in a smoothie or a flavored milk, or a juice or the Gatorade at that, in that half an hour, that will make sure that you top up those levels. But your last main meal can be 3 hours beforehand to give yourself time to digest. Afterwards, what we know is that the earlier you eat, the quicker that recovery will start. We used to think that you had this window of opportunity for, muscle recovery from a protein intake perspective. We now know that that's probably not as essential. The essential thing about protein is the consistency over the day, rather than you have to get in this window of opportunity after you play. So as long as it's within the couple of hours after, you can give your body time to just calm down a little bit, for the adrenaline to calm, because that's probably what's going to make you feel a little bit sick. Again, if you can get in a bit of fluid straight away, whether it be a flavored milk or a little bit of a sports drink as well to start that recovery from even a hydration perspective, that's ideal. But ideally in the 1 to 2 hours after you finish is when you'd have your sort of post-game main meal.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dom. That was great. I know Lucas will have his notepad out writing down those answers. So thank you so much for your thorough answer. Awesome. And great questions, Lucas. This is a lighter segment. It's a bit of a get to know you part of the podcast, Dom. So it doesn't have to be sports dietitian specific.
Okay.
Which movie or TV series has impacted you the most and why?
Oh, such a good question. Okay, I think There's two, I would say. There's friends, and just because it just saw me through so many years in my younger years, and just the best memories of waiting for friends to come on. Like, I think it was a Monday night. Just loved it. And now, since the Friends reunion, like I'm sure many people have been, I've just started watching them all over again. And it's just such a feel-good, beautiful show. So loved Friends. A main one, and I guess it's probably more speaking to the females side of things, is Sex and the City. Just saw me through my uni years. And all I remember is, staying till really late and then having my cup of tea, watching a Sex and the City episode, and just completely took my mind off things, and probably just had the biggest, impact from what it did for me from a emotion feeling. So that has nothing to do with any performance based, or it's just two very light-hearted shows that bring really happy memories.
Yeah. But they probably do help you perform, don't they? Like,
well, it's a really important part. Yeah, spot on. Yeah.
Very good. Well, there's no doubt a few people tuned in that are looking for some new shows or to refresh off some old classics. So there's a couple of big ones there. Favorite inspirational quote or life motto?
Yeah. I'm not one for big, inspirational quotes, but my life motto, I think, is simple, and it's just be kind. I think not enough people are kind. And I just think regardless of where you get or where you want to be, doing it in a way that you're true to yourself and you respect people and you're kind to people, it will get you there. You don't need to be, you have this big ego or feel like you have to be someone that you're not to make it in high performance sport. Some cultures and environments make you feel that way, because it's very competitive. But I just have always stood by that, and and I just think it's really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Great message to share, especially in today's chaotic world that we're in at the moment. In your work life, what makes you angry? What are your pet peeves?
Now I won't sort of get on my soapbox about this, but probably people that are not qualified to give nutrition advice and do. I think that's probably, as a dietitian, and I'm sure we all say it, but nutrition is one of those things that it's really hard because everybody eats. Right? And everybody has an opinion around what makes them feel good, what makes them perform well, and then feels like they can pass that on. And that can get dangerous when you're working in a high performance sport and you have certain people in, say, the high performance team who are amazing at what they do, but are not trained in nutrition, giving nutrition advice. And I guess it's frustrating because a lot of the times the advice is actually not what we would want to be saying, and sometimes can be detrimental to performance. So, having to then undo that, and especially if they've got pretty influential voices, can be really challenging and just frustrating.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. What's your favourite way to spend your day off?
Oh, I haven't had a day off for a while, but if I did, it would be. I'm not much of I don't sleep in a lot, but maybe a little sleep in. Always coffee. Always start with coffee. If it was a day off, I'd probably have a couple. Take the dog for a walk, go for a big run, come home, and then probably just do some cooking. And go out for some wine and cocktails with the girls.
Yeah, nice. It's a nice full day.
It's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to make the most of it. You only live once.
You do.
And then last one, favorite holiday. So this is COVID-free world. Favorite holiday destination and why? Yeah, dream. Have a dream for a.
Oh gosh, holiday. How good does that feel? Okay, so I'm a summer, but I just love the heat. I can sit in the sun. I'm like a lizard. Hotter the better. So it'd have to be somewhere really warm. I used to do a lot of travel to Europe for my Deakin work, and it was always over Europe summer, and it's just incredible. And I'm Italian, and I've been to Italy a few times, and that is honestly my favorite place in the whole world. So Italian summer, one of the Italian islands, Sardinia is incredible, Sicily, on a beach, can't get much better.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. I haven't been to Italy, but it's definitely on my list. My dad says it's fantastic. The food and the culture.
Just the food. It's incredible. Yeah, so definitely my fave.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it up with what are you excited about for 2021? What's on the horizon for you?
For 2021 or 22? Are we thinking the end of this year?
The end of this year. Yeah. But you can go 22 too. Yeah.
No, good. I think outside of the professional world for a minute, I'm excited for the world Australia to hopefully go back to some sort of normal so that we can all do what we love to do a little bit more. Excited to have that work-life balance back, to go to the gym, to be able to travel and do all those sort of things. So that's more of a personal level. I'm excited for that. From a work perspective, I'm really excited about some of the opportunities that are coming up at Deakin and the Cats. I think, we're starting again some really exciting PhD projects. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. And that's, my research career is, starting to, because I changed careers from my focus to sports nutrition. It takes a while to build up, and it's really starting to get that momentum. So, we've got some funding, we've got PhD students, and I think as soon as we're able to start our data collection again, I can really see that to be my next big focus. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, fingers crossed it can come back soon. And thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing your experiences.
Thanks for having me.
And providing some good insight into what elite athletes are doing with their nutrition, as well as plenty of advice for sports dietitians as well to get better. For those that want to connect with you and check out like your website and all the things that you're doing, where's the easiest place to connect with yourself, Dom?
Yeah, probably if you pop onto my Instagram page, and then the bio, the link to the website and whatnot is all on there. So that's probably the easiest. And, any questions, feel free to send me a message via that area. And if you are someone that wants more individualized advice or consultations, then the website you can book online for online consults.
Awesome. Very good. We'll make sure we put the Instagram handle as well as your website in the show notes. And thanks again, Dom. Really looking forward to
Thank you.
Speaking and meeting with you in the flesh one day in a COVID-free world, but no doubt it'll be,
absolutely.
Maybe we'll do a big panel of sports dietitians sometime in the future online as well, which will be good fun.
Yeah, be awesome. Thanks for having me, Jack.
Awesome. Cheers, Dom. Speak soon. Go Cats as well.
Yeah, go Cats.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. I know I took a lot out of it. Super inspirational chat with Dom there. So if you missed some part of that chat, you can head to our YouTube channel to watch the full episode, and we'll launch it on our podcast as well for those that want to listen to the recording on Spotify and iTunes. Subscribe to the podcast, and we'll launch that episode in the next couple of months. If you're new to Prepare Like a Pro, make sure to head over to our Instagram page. We give away plenty of freebies by subscribing to our newsletter. And our next live chat is going to be next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. with Jared Egan, who's a strength and conditioning coach. He worked at Port Adelaide for a number of years and is now managing the Sydney Grammar High School program there. So looking forward to that chat. If you have any questions or queries, feel free to hit us up.